Have you ever had a moment where you thought, if I could just change my clients, or Jacob, your mum, or your boss, or your partner, if I could just change my clients, my life would be so much easier? I'm glad I'm not the only one. The thing is, I had that thought literally every day for years. And I remember what that felt like. There was this constant feeling of pressure, of stress, of exhaustion. Whatever I was going to do was never going to be good enough. There was always going to be somebody who wants me to do more faster. And there was literally no end in sight at all. But I also remember the moment that led to a 180-degree shift of my experience of that whole business. And I'm here today to share with you how that turnaround came about and why that's really good news for you as well. Now, in 2002, I went on a holiday to the south of Spain, and I spent 2 weeks in lovely Granada, like this. Well, that's actually just next door to my house now. And I simply, to cut a long story short, I fell in love with the place. I mean, how can you not fall in love with that? And I remember wandering through the old part of town where really there was the sense that time had stood still and life was simple. And I remember thinking, God, I'd love to live here. And so, okay, I went back to London, and I found myself one evening coming home from my IT job thinking, if I was to move to Spain, if I really was to do that, what on earth would I do for a living? I wasn't going to get an IT job and do the same thing. So I was like, okay, let's take a step back. If I could do anything, if I could do whatever I wanted, didn't have to worry about money or time or qualifications or anything, what would I do? And I knew, like instantly, I was actually cutting a dress on my dining table with some flamenco music playing in the background. And I knew it was that. And so the next thing I thought was, okay, what makes that impossible? And I couldn't think of anything. And, a couple of years later, in 2004, I resigned from my job, I packed up my stuff, and I moved to Granada. And it was really more an experiment. It was more like a game. It was really, my business plan was like really simple. Let's see what happens. So, and it didn't bother me all too much that I'd never run a business and that I'd never really sewn for anybody other than myself. But why would that let me stop you? Let it stop me. So there I was, and what followed was a few months of hustle that felt like didn't lead anywhere until a friend of mine took me to a flamenco class that she was taking. And out of that came my very first big order, 12 dresses for flamenco dancers for a performance at a theater. And everything really grew from there. And there would be one more client, and some of these girls would come back, and then somebody rings like, oh, so-and-so gave me your number. And it started to grow, and it didn't take long until somebody goes, oh, actually, I'm really rushed for time. Can you bring that dress up to the theater on Sunday evening? I'll finish about 11. Oh, no problem. Next one would go, oh, I really need, I got a call, I'm in the final of that competition. I need a new dress by Monday, but that's only 3 days. Oh, please, not a problem. Next one says, oh, I can't come for the fitting, you need to come to the school. Not a problem. And it really wasn't a problem if you have 3 clients. But when you have 10 or 20, that becomes really stressful. Like you constantly try and do something, and then somebody seems as if they're pulling from all sides. And I'd love to ask how many of you are thinking now, why don't you just say no? Well, that's the thing. I felt I couldn't, because naturally, if my whole business had grown by word of mouth, and place is small, everybody knows each other, and so it was like, if I say no, then she'd be upset. And then that meant I'd lose her as a client. And then she'll go talk to everybody else. And then basically in a month, I was in the street, homeless. And so saying no really wasn't an option. And basically it kept going like that. Like that frog when the water slowly gets hotter and you don't really notice. And there I went. And from the outside, it looked like this, happy dancers, living your dream, the German crazy woman who moved to Spain and do flamenco dresses. It's like as if you moved to Bavaria to Munich and make dirndls. You know, it's a bit kind of, everybody thought it was crazy. And that's what it looked like from the outside. But inside, the pressure, it was kind of getting more and more until the last Saturday in June 2012. And that was me. And if you're wondering, yes, it is a very effective weight loss strategy, not one I recommend. It isn't much fun at all. When that photo was taken, there are a few dresses, there's like part of the dresses I made for that performance. When that photo was taken, I hadn't slept in 4 days and 3 nights. Actually, I'm lying. I did sleep 20 minutes on the tiled floor next to the dog, so I wouldn't fall asleep. And I was worried I wouldn't wake up until after the performance. And I had cold sores on both sides of my mouth, and it was like, well, that. and I knew, like, this was it. I couldn't bend any further. Like, if this is what that live your dream shit is, I don't want it. And so I thought, okay, that's it. No more come to the theater at 11. And if that means that all the clients will stay away, then so be it. I didn't care anymore. So now it didn't take long. And somebody go, oh, why can't you come to the theater? I really need you to bring that dress. And I'm like, oh, sorry, sweetie, can't do that. And she goes, all right. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, what? Like, and then the next thing and the next thing. And I realized that the whole chain of horrible events that caused all that pressure I felt, that I'd made that up. It didn't come from people. It didn't come from my clients. And that's when everything started to change. And funny enough, my clients all of a sudden were really a lot nicer. And I thought, isn't that funny how magically my clients have changed? And I knew things were picking up, and everything was like it had a different feel to it. And I knew fairly soon, I had no idea what I was going to do and how and where, but I knew I needed to help anybody in a similar situation. There's so many people who go 9 to 5 to a job they don't like, counting down the hours until Friday, and just going through the motions. And the few people who may go out and try and follow their heart, they find they're struggling. And I think it's just such a waste of human potential and creativity that it just breaks my heart. And so if I can support just one person, I'll do that. So how do I do that? Oh, I'll become a coach. Now there I go. And then I started researching, how does one become a coach? How does one actually do that? And I remember seeing a course advertised, Coaching from the Inside Out. And I'm like, oh, I like the sound of that, because everything that happened for me felt like, because on the outside nothing had changed, and it felt the whole change, the whole turnaround had come from the inside, so I was really drawn to that. And the more I got into what that actually was, what they were talking about, everything started to make sense. And even the good things. Because sometimes I was wondering, how on earth could I even pull this whole business thing off with no idea? And it was really what Joachim was mentioning before, that whole thing, like, to not have anything on it. It was an experiment. It was a game. Let's see what happens. There was just and that really gave the room for creativity to come out, to just take the next step that made sense. And what I thought it was just this disorganized nutcase trying to do something, it turned out it was actually a sensible way of going about it and make it work. And so the other day, earlier this month, I drove home from delivering these dresses to a group, and I sat in my car and I had that soft feeling of satisfaction, because I knew it'd gone really well. The kids loved their dresses, and the little boys too. and the mums were happy, and the teacher was happy because everything had gone well and she looked good. And all of a sudden I remembered, I was like, actually, I've made dresses for these people. Now, not just a similar group in a similar village, in a similar, no, the exact same girls. This exact same group 5 years earlier, like a couple of weeks before that other photo. And I remember the experience at the time. It was like, I felt like it was me, that wounded animal crawling around the floor, and these mothers, like vultures, hovering over me, just waiting to pounce down and finish me off. And now, they were sending me messages via WhatsApp, thank you messages, and they'd be sending photos, and, oh, can you make me a dress for this and that? And it was just an entirely different experience. And the clients are the same. Even the school is the same, the teacher, everything's the same. So you see, you don't need new clients. You don't need anything other than understanding where and how our experience is created. And I can even look at my clients, because that doesn't only work for me. Like, they also live in their own thought-created world. So that opens the door for an entirely different level of compassion towards them. And once you see how that actually works, everything changes and everything becomes possible, even following your heart. Thank you.